This podcast is for general informational purposes only and represents the individual opinions of Dr. Dimitri Bick, Dr. Stefan de Graaf, Dr. Suzanne Mignon, and the guests. It does not constitute the practice of medicine or other professional healthcare services and should not be taken as medical advice or an establishment of standard of care. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The content on this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, but more importantly, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Reviews not only help us grow listeners, but also help us grow as a show, improve our content, and make us better.
You know that I don't like TikTok, right? You guys?
Yes, okay. You've made that very abundantly clear.
I mean, it would be concerning if you liked it.
Really?
Because it's not
a lot of people like it.
It's not a documentary, Dimitri. That's why you don't.
Very good. Very good. I like that. That's
nice.
I
was referring more about your age.
Yeah, you are the oldest one here.
I got to tell you, there's a lot of old people on TikTok who are trying to be funny. But I have gone down a rabbit hole on TikTok that I'm not proud of. I am addicted to the scare prank videos where people walk into a room and someone like goes, and they record them like freaking out. And there's different versions of these. There's that one where people walk into a room. There's one where like people like, I don't even know how they get away with this, but they like dress up in costumes and like attack people in garages and on the street. And then there's one guy who dresses up like a plant.
Yes.
And like grabs them on the street. Mm-hmm. I gotta be honest, I sit on my couch and I start laughing. So I don't laugh about anything in my life as much as I laugh at these scare prank videos. And these people are genuinely scared. Now it's funny because, you know, they laugh and but I feel like, am I a bad person for laughing at other people getting scared?
Are you laughing with them or at them?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, it's not as bad. I enjoy watching those videos on Instagram where people fall. Like people falling, baby falling. I mean, that's worse. And they're funny. It's funny when people fall, man. I mean, wow. It's bad, but it's funny.
Yeah, and some of these scare prank videos, people not only freak out, but they fall. So I get the double.
Yeah, I've seen them like run into other people. I've seen them like go out into the middle of the street. There's potential danger there.
And some of them I can understand or they can do it because it's clearly not America. It's like in the middle of nowhere and they're speaking a language I don't understand. And you can do that, I guess, there. But I don't know how they get away with it in America. Like, how can a guy dressed as a plant?
They do it in Vegas all the time.
A lot of them look like would be in Vegas, but there's some that, I don't know, man. I don't know how this guy with the plant doesn't get punched. Like,
how do you know that he doesn't? And that's just not shown in the video clips because they're going to edit it to make it what they want to.
No, I get it, but
you know,
this guy's got to have bruises everywhere from people hitting them. But they're so funny, and I was watching them right before we came on too, and they're just I can't stop watching them. Maria hates it because I do this to her. I just haven't recorded it yet, but I walk up behind her, not necessarily on purpose to scare her, but it's funny because when I walk up behind her and I like glance over and she turns and sees me, she goes, it's the funniest thing you've ever seen.
One day she is going to punch you.
She has once, but it hasn't been in the face. But she gets so mad at me. Gets so mad.
Yes.
And one of these days I'm going to record it. And of course, if she's listening to this, then she's going to know I'm going to come up behind her and record it, and she's going to be even madder. And the ones that I find the most funny are the ones with the James Brown song, I Feel Good,
Mhm.
where they're behind them with a speaker and they start the beginning
And
of
they
that
blast
song and they blast it as loud as they can. There are people that have like dropped eggs and like spilled water on. They're so mad.
I mean, I don't think anybody would be able to stay calm in that moment. It would work on anybody, not expecting the sound, the scream.
I guess. Maybe if you're antisocial.
Maybe, unless you're deaf and then you're deaf and you don't hear it. If you're deaf and you don't hear it, it wouldn't work. Right?
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that makes me a bad person or not because I'm laughing at these people, but
no.
I feel like a bad person watching these things, but I'm still going to watch them and laugh.
No.
Then you don't feel too bad.
Clearly not.
Clearly not.
Clearly not. Well, this week, my children said a word, and I thought this would be a perfect Gen X Explains Youth Speak segment. So let's run that.
Generation X explains youth speak?
All right. Have you guys heard the word Rizz?
Yes.
You're shaking your head, Suzanne.
Yes.
Do you know what it means?
Yes.
Kind of.
Tell me what it means, Suzanne, as you understand it.
Yeah, it's like it's something cool. It's like they're using it to express like something is like cool, awesome, whatever. Rizz.
No, that's not what it means. No, that's not what it means.
That's how I've heard my kids use it.
Hold on. Dimitri, hold on. Do not tell me the definition yet. Use it in a sentence.
The last time I heard it, it was used as a verb. Because it could be used as a noun or a verb, as I understand it. But the last time I heard it,
noun or a verb or an adjective, or just a noun or a verb.
Well, I guess we'll get into it in a second. But the last time I heard it used was as a verb. Was Livy rizzed up baby Gronk. That's the last time I heard it before my kids said it. So what I asked, and apparently my kids know what this means because they said, I said, what does that mean? Because my older son told me what it was, but my middle son said that another kid in his class told him that he has the Rizz.
So when it's used like that, isn't it kind of like you have the it factor type of thing?
Well, when I said, because Maria's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I've heard this before. I think it means something cool. And I asked Ethan, the older son, and he said what it means is that you have game.
So why not say you got game?
Because they're children. They have new words.
To say Rizz.
So Rizz apparently comes from the word charisma.
You got game.
Okay.
Yeah, because you got game. You're so cool.
Steph is having mad technical issues today with his internet, so we're not going to hear anything he says.
I guess I was saying that there used to be a time having game used to be cool. So I guess
it is apparently, but apparently the Rizz comes from the word charisma, and they just shortened it. I looked it up on Urban Dictionary because that's where I get all of my youth speak information, and so. This is what Urban Dictionary says. Another word for spitting game. How good you are with pulling and sustaining bitches. Literally from Urban Dictionary.
There you go.
New York slang created by a Twitch streamer and YouTuber named Kai Cenat. This means that you have game and get bitches. Rizz actually comes from the word charisma, where in southern Baltimore they've started to shorten it to Rizma, the noun replacing charisma, and to Rizz, the action of showing charisma. Through Twitch live streamer Kai Cenat's editor, a resident of South Baltimore, he started putting Rizz in the compilation thumbnails and the word adopted all over the United States. When you're able to pull the most bad bitches with little to no effort. So...
I have two questions. First...
Only two?
First, why are we as a species, are we human, are getting lazier by the day? We couldn't say charisma, so we said Rizma. Now we're saying Rizz. Next I'm going to say right? And then the next question, why is your son mentioning Rizz and bitches and whatnot?
I like the second question, but the first question, Steph, you're the young one on this panel here, and you've never sounded older. And you're the young one.
Dimitri, you're being very mean today.
Oh, really? Okay. Not the
Yeah.
one that's being mean.
You're
Okay.
the mean one today.
That's
You've
scary.
never sounded older. And the answer to your second question, which is the one I wanted to know, and Maria did too, is why are you given this ability to Rizz? Why is an 8-year-old being
Why are you
given
getting
this
bitches?
ability? This is great. Look at him. He's got the Rizz. So, but Maria was not as happy as I was for my 8-year-old having the Rizz. But apparently he's very popular.
So your 8-year-old got
So-
some bitches in school, huh? That's what we're coming down to here.
He's ahead of his time.
Listen, I'm not saying anything about an 8-year-old getting bitches.
Well,
I'm just
using your definition that you read.
okay.
You might be a
Oh,
proud
boy.
papa.
I am a proud papa, and I don't know if I'm very proud of this segment, laughing at people who are getting scared, and proud that my 8-year-old has Rizz. So there's a story that came out this week that is not good for Ole Miss and for Lane Kiffin. And it just reiterates that coaches in sports in general, but specifically football, and I believe that this is probably in the NFL too, but college football has now become just pro football. I mean, it always was, but now it's like in the open.
It's more
And
legit
the-
that way.
That's right. And the old guard, the old timey coaches hate it because you don't want to give the players power. But essentially it's what it's doing. It's allowing them to earn money. But it shows that they see them as nothing more than labor. And the story was that an Ole Miss player who was a defensive tackle, DeSanto Rollins, is suing Ole Miss for the University of Mississippi
Mhm.
for equal protection, racial and sexual discrimination, and other things. So, very briefly, the story, Rollins, who's a backup lineman whose career has been marred by injuries, and this is directly from the ESPN article, by the way, is seeking $10 million in compensatory damages and $30 million in punitive damages. The lawsuit alleges that Kiffin intentionally took adverse action against Rollins, quote, on account of race, for requesting and taking a mental health break, but not adverse action against white student athletes, unquote, for the same request. It alleges sexual discrimination on the basis that Ole Miss had not taken, quote, adverse action against female student athletes for requesting and taking a mental health break, unquote. So essentially what happened to him is he's had multiple injuries in his career, which caused him to feel what they write in the article as severe depression. The coaches, when all of this happened, wanted him to enter the transfer portal, and he refused. And when he refused, they changed his position from DT to offensive line and sent him to the scout team. Mm-hmm. Then in January of this year, his grandmother died, which further exacerbated his depression. Kiffin, who's the head coach of Ole Miss, demanded to talk to him at some point, and Rollins said he wasn't ready to talk to him yet. And then at some point later on, he finally agreed to the conversation and he recorded it. Now in Mississippi, recording a conversation without the other person's knowledge is legal.
Legal.
As long as you are the one recording it and part of the conversation. So if you're the one in the conversation, so say one party rule, whereas in Florida where we are, it's an all-party rule.
Yeah.
It's an all-party rule.
Yeah. It's funny because when I read the article the first time, it says that he legally recorded the conversation without Kiffin's knowledge. And I'm like, is that a typo? Legally recorded?
Yeah, no, it's legal. It's legal
Kiffin's
there.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
And then I Googled it and said, yeah, it's legal.
Yeah, it's legal.
It's legal.
I thought the same thing.
Amazing. And that,
yeah, I had to go back and read it as well.
Right. Usually that sentence always go with illegally recorded, right?
Yeah. Right. But it made sure to specify that it was legal in the article.
Yeah.
And so this is part of the recording, that the transcript from the recording that I'm just going to read quickly. and I'm gonna bleep out the bad words,
Yeah,
just like ESPN
you need
edited
to
out,
read
because
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
I don't
like
want
they
to. I don't want to
edited.
do all that. I don't want to do all that editing again.
But it is so bad that you need to read it because people
It's
need to get the
bad.
context. It's really bad.
Yeah. Quote, okay, you have a bleeping head coach. This is a job. Guess what? If I have mental issues and I'm not diminishing them, I can't not see my effing boss, Kiffin said, according to the lawsuit and the audio recording. Quote, when you were told again and again the head coach needs to see you, wasn't to make you practice, wasn't to play a position you don't bleeping want to, okay? It was to talk to you and explain to you in the real world, okay? So I don't give a bleep what your mom says, okay? Or what you think in the real effing world. You show up to work and then you say, hey, I have mental issues. I can't do anything for 2 weeks, but if you change my position, I won't have mental issues. I guarantee if we bleep and called you in and said you're playing defense, would you have mental issues? I definitely would, Rollins said. During the exchange, Rollins is heard saying, I mean, you're acting like my issues aren't real. I did say they are not real, Kiffin responded. You show up when your boss wants to meet with you. It wouldn't have been like this. If you would have come here when you kept getting messages the head coach wants to talk to you, you say, I'm not ready to talk to him. I wasn't, Rollins said. What bleeping world do you live in? Kiffin asked. I don't see why you have to be disrespectful, honestly, Rollins said. Get out of here, Kiffin said. Go, you're off the team, you're done. See ya, go. And guess what? We can kick you off the team. So go read your bleeping rights about mental health. We can kick you off the team for not showing up. When the head coach asks to meet with you and you don't show up for weeks, we can remove you from the team. It's called being a blank. I'm not going to say the word, but it starts with a P.
Yeah.
Kiffin said. It's called hiding behind S. You can figure that one out. And not showing up to work. So that's part of the transcript from that. And essentially what it shows to me is exactly what I always thought, is that they don't actually see people as humans. They see them as labor. And when labor asks for power, whether it's within unions or, within the context of sports where the athletes are the ones generating the money, but they're not getting any of it, the old guard and the power resists. And this is an example of how they see it. Now, you guys wanted to talk the different kinds of depression, but wanted to get your takes on this particular story before we get into depression itself.
Absolutely. From the transcript that you read, obviously the coach appears to have a very negative view about mental health problems, including depression. And the coach is trying to spin it and make it seem like, oh, it's just because you changed your position and it's kind of like you're throwing a tantrum. When in fact, the depression that he had experienced was longstanding as a result of his injuries, then further compounded by his grandmother passing. And depression can be very debilitating, as we're going to be talking about shortly. I think that in the article, it talks about how he was referred to mental health providers after the mom called and requested it. She was concerned about him. And when he did meet with someone, they had talked about him needing time off and not meeting with the coach. And it just seems like the head coach just said, I don't give an F. That's it. You're my worker, basically. You work for me, and this is what you have to do. And so it just goes to show you, to your point, Dimitri, the same issue. He's seen as like this robot who can't have feelings, who can't need a break, and apparently it's happening more prevalent with that football team, and other teams are more lenient about it, according to the lawsuit.
Yeah, and then I was gonna say that maybe they never saw him looking physically depressed. They did not know, right? He never said it, but maybe they didn't notice it, I would say. And that's why later we'll talk about how depression can look different for different people, and you can have different reasons to be depressed for. But in the article, the lawsuit did say that he acknowledged or he endorsed, feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration and humiliation. He felt embarrassed. And one of the two symptoms that you mentioned was having difficulty with sleep and losing appetite, right? And then, I can imagine, in sports, people can be more violent, more active, more aggressive. And maybe for a coach, maybe for his teammates, that might mean him being at his normal, right? Sometimes people When they're not in sports, they can lash out people. They can use what we call displacement and use their anger towards somebody else or towards an object or something, right? But in football or in other sports, that aggression may not be seen as part of acting out as part of mental illness, right? So that's where it's so important for athletics team or athletic department to have people that are knowledgeable in mental health, so that those things don't go unnoticed, because they could look different from the common population, right? And in that case, I think further down in the history, in an article, they mentioned that the law also mentioned that the coaching staff had never had any class or any teaching, any training into mental health. They had no idea how to depict or to see the signs of mental health. So that's where it's concerning that nowadays most teams should have somebody that could see the kind of things.
Lane Kiffin makes $8.75 million. And in 2013, the Mississippi on-field football coaches will make 15.96, so $16 million, roughly 26% more than the collective base compensation for the previous year, which was 2022. So Kiffin, if I'm going to interpret this in a very cynical way, of course he doesn't care. He's trying to protect a $1 million salary, and the only way to do that is to win games. So if he loses games, he's going to lose his job. So naturally, he doesn't see these people as people. He sees them as, you're the guys protecting my job, and you better protect my job. Again, that's my interpretation of it. Maybe we should play the Goldwater sound for this, but it's not a diagnosis. It's just my interpretation of the way he sees his job. And this is not something that is uncommon in any sort of football, the NFL too, but it's when it's out there publicly and you can actually see behind the curtain, it comes across as a little shocking, although I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me, of what we always see in the public sphere, like the celebrity sphere. When someone die of suicide, we all say, we had no idea. It never looked like they were depressed. I recall, what's his name, Twitch, the DJ that was an alien. The guy, before that, I would think of the guy being the prototypical happiest person in the world. The guy dance and sing for a living, right? Does TikTok, and then suddenly dies out of depression. And you can't never ever know what somebody's dealing with, because looking like you're right doesn't mean that you're right. So this kid, we don't know how he was looking when he was in the team. And if he comes to you as a part of coaching staff and tells you, I'm feeling this kind of way, I don't think you have any license or any right to say you shouldn't feel like this, or you don't feel like this, or you don't look like you feel like this, right? So and he also reminds me of that say that treat people well, because you never know what kind of burden they carry. Treat each other well. You don't know what everybody else is carrying around. So depression for me, it's a very tricky diagnosis in mental health, because they can be secretive. People can decide to hide their feelings or hide the symptoms out of shame and humiliation.
Right. And again, I'm not surprised by any of this stuff, because and this is not something that's new in not football. I don't know if you saw the CEO make a comment about how he thinks that the labor force should be unemployed at about 30 or 40%, because labor is getting they want too many things. Let me see if I can pull up the sound while you guys discuss, because what we wanted to discuss is depression and the different kinds of depression.
And I think that one of the biggest factors that we have kind of talked about just now is that depression, like other illnesses, you might not be able to physically see in a person, because a lot of it is involving the person's thoughts and how they're feeling, and people try to hide what's happening with them as well. And so although you might see a person start to do things like detach and withdraw, but a lot of people don't notice that a person's doing that.
So what are the different kinds of depression? There's major depression, obviously bipolar depression, and there's depression in other situations. So what have you seen in your practices as far as different kinds of depression, and what's the difference between these things?
Yeah, I mean, we can go, that could last an hour or two, but we can go and see, like you said, the most common thing. First, but I'll say first, I've had patients that come to me and they don't know what depression is. Nobody ever told them that's depression. No, we know as common, layman term, what sadness is. And I tell people all the time, sadness is normal human behavior. You're supposed to feel sad when something affects you. Depression is when it comes to it becomes clinical, when it affects, and the key term is when it affects your function in life, affects your productivity,
Correct.
affects your interaction with your family and friends, affect your biological needs, meaning you're not showering properly, you're not eating as you should, you're not sleeping as you should, and you're not providing for a family as you should, meaning you're not going to work. Or you go to work, you get fired because you're not paying attention to work. There's no motivation, there's no attention, entire livelihood. And I have a parenthesis that it's well known that in the United States, depression is a number one reason or number one condition that spend most money on Medicare and Medicaid and on a disability. It's not cancer, it's not surgery, it's depression. Most people in the United States go on disability due to depression. Yeah, so that's the answer to the question about what depression is itself, and we can go into details about the different type of depression.
To piggyback off of what Steph is saying and to go with your question, Dimitri, some of the things that I've seen, I'm seeing people with varying degrees of mental health problems, and one is depression. I've seen depression in some of my clients where it's been so severe that it's impacting their ability, and because I do the court stuff, it's impacting their ability to assist in their own case. It's impacting their ability to function and to think clearly and to concentrate on things. So it could be very debilitating in that way. I've also had clients where all they do is sleep all day and they're not engaging in any activities. That's what they want to do. And then I have people with more mild forms of depression where they feel the down, they feel sometimes hopeless. One of the other things that come along with depression and the varying forms of depression and other disorders such as bipolar disorder is we also see these thoughts of self-harm, right? Suicidal ideations, thinking about hurting themselves, thinking about killing themselves. And so, of course, I've run across that in my practice. I have had clients who have ended up killing themselves. Now we try to refer people to crisis centers.
Yeah, we should mention the suicide hotline number.
Yeah, the suicide hotline number is 988. You can call that number, you can text that number if you are feeling suicidal, having thoughts about it, or if you know someone who is. That number, you can also go online and you can chat as well online. So there's multiple ways to get in touch, in immediate contact with a crisis counselor.
Suzanne mentioned bipolar disorder, and I was, the other day we're talking about how different diagnoses in mental health could present with depression. That does not mean that the primary disorder.
Steph, we're losing you.
That's absolutely perfect. The timing on that freeze was. We couldn't script that any better.
No, we couldn't. You look great. You look great. If you can hear
great, right? Yes, you look great frozen in that position, and I want to take a screenshot of that so I can post that.
Did you take it, Dimitri?
Yes, I did. I took a screenshot of it. I don't know where my screenshot went, but I did take a screenshot of it. Hopefully, I will get it somewhere. But and now he's gone.
There he is. He's back.
There you are. You're back.
Did you just try to prank scare us, Steph?
That would have been fun.
Because that was perfect.
Oh, it seems like when I start speaking, I guess I take the bit of Wi-Fi that I have.
I totally understood.
But yeah, if I feel free, if I'm being cut out, just take it where I leave it. But I was saying, I think that there's different diagnoses that present with depression, right? And it doesn't matter if it's bipolar disorder. I talk about all the time. Bipolar is two conditions in one: is the depression and it's the mania, right? But there's other disorders, like the other day we we're talking about borderline personality disorders, that also could come with depression, right? People with PTSD, for example, could come with depression. And we've had episode talking about injuries in sports, like the Muhammad injury, and when he died on the field, that could cause PTSD, and they could have depression with PTSD, right? Bunch of substance use disorders come with depression as well. That being said, if you want to go and focus on the diagnosis of major depressive disorder, there's
this
criteria,
isn't working, Steph.
and I think, and we do the CCAPS thing and define the criteria. Take it away of the criteria for MDD by the DSM-5.
Go ahead. While your internet is still working, please tell us the difference between major depressive disorder and bipolar depression, because it can be summarized in one word. All right, so now he's frozen again. So I'm going to summarize it. The difference between major depression and bipolar depression is that they're exactly the same. So that the word is the same.
Is that the one word? The same.
It's same. They're exactly the same. The symptoms of bipolar depression and major depression are identical.
Right.
That's right. So let me play the sound of this guy. His name is Tim Gurner of the Gurner Group. He's the CEO, and they're, I think, a property developing company. His net worth is estimated somewhere north of 700 million. And this is him talking about unemployment.
We're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue. People decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40-50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. There's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. It's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off. And
it's really interesting that a guy worth $700 million is saying he thinks unemployment should be 30 to 40%. Because, of course, if he's unemployed, who cares, right? But he's not going to be unemployed because he's actually the CEO of the company. But if he were to be unemployed, he's living on $700 million of net worth. He's going to be fine. But you unemploy 30 to 40% of the population, and what happens, right? So he's saying that people are getting paid a lot of money to do very little. The increase in salary this year was 4%, 4.4%. Inflation's like 7%. So salaries aren't even keeping up with inflation. And this dude here is talking about they get paid so much to do nothing. Now, I can understand a little bit where, if you're asked by your employer to come into work or do something and you flat out refuse, that's different. But to just blatantly say that there's arrogance in the labor market because people are asking for things like, normal living wages or benefits from a company whose CEO is worth $700 million. So imagine what the market cap of the company is exactly why we're having the societal issues. Okay. Is that people feel like they're being essentially oppressed by the rich, and they're not being appreciated for what they do because, dude, and if I was talking to him, if you have no employees, you have no goddamn company. So, whatever, like you're going to unemploy 50% of your workforce. You're not going to have a company to run. So get over yourself, dude. It annoys me to no end, but this is an example of what's going on in sports is they don't see people as humans. They see people as labor. And of course, I asked you to come talk to me. It doesn't matter how you effing feel. You need to come talk to me right now because I'm the boss. Like, who are you, dude? Like, remember, if all your players left, you would have no salary. So it's short-sighted, and who's the arrogant one, right?
Yeah.
saying that it's, you know, you work at our pleasure. So that's
Yeah.
my
I think that there's a sense of
soapbox.
entitlement with power or money or ownership. It's just entitlement. You know, they expect you to deliver what they're paying for, what they're buying for. And it's the word ownership, right? And some athletes have said they don't like the word owner because it ties down to slavery, if you will, and owning people, if you will. And some athletes take offense to the word ownership.
Let's be clear. It's not slavery when you get paid for it.
No, it's
So
not. It's not. I mean, I'll
you
make sure it's
can't,
not.
athletes can't claim they're slaves. So let's not
It's
do
not.
that.
It's not. But I think
But I can understand when they feel unappreciated.
right. I think the analogy was whoever said it at one point, for let's say NBA or football, is that the fact that the owners treated them like they're you know, pieces of property, right? They're
Expendable.
expendable. They're employees, right? My boss doesn't own me. Is my owner. Is, you know, is paying my check. Doesn't own me if it's my owner. If that makes sense. But I feel like in sports, they kind of do whatever they want with the players, right? I can decide to cut you or make you or tell you to play.
They're owners in the sense that they own the team, but they don't own the
All
people
the
that work
players.
for them.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And so this is, you know, I don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over again. I think I've made my point about this.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some sense of that. That's why they have player association. That's the job of that body to defend players' interests. That's why, you know, it exists. If it was really how the owners would want it, there would not be any player association. It would be the owners doing whatever they want, and you know, by default, they can't. That's why they have unions.
Correct. But I think a lot of it too has to do with the attitude of the leadership or the owners, whatever it is, you know, because if you make your players, your staff, whoever it is, feel that they have some worth, some level of appreciation, I think that's going to go a long way. And you're not going to have the complaints from the players or anything like that with the dissatisfaction. So, you know, it comes really from the top, where you have to set the tone and the example. And the tone that's being set in some places is you don't matter as a person. You are my employee. You are my player. You have a job to do. And I need you to do your job so that I can reap the benefits of that. And that's it.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. It's a mindset of the owner. And you can say, you can say you're my player, you work for me, but I appreciate you as a person. And you show it the way you treat your players. You know, and I'm not a business owner or anything, but I know like good businesses, employees want to work for the bosses. They go to work with the desire to work for the bosses
That's
because
right.
they feel appreciated.
Yes.
They don't go to work and work well because they have to work for the bosses. You get more out of your employees when they want to work for you. Now, if they have to work for you because you threaten them or you treat them like they're a piece of ass, then you probably get less productivity from your employees and your players.
There are people that treat people like a piece of ass that are better than the way this guy is treating employees. I wanted to talk to this guy because he has two careers that both mean something to me. One of them I already do, a psychiatrist, but the other is a dream job that I wanted as a child. He's a comedian, and when I was a kid, I watched a show called Star Search. I don't know if you're going to know what this is, Steph, but Neil, I'm pretty sure that you know what this is. Star Search is a show where people will go on and do a bunch of acts, I guess, and they get rated and maybe end up with a career, but my favorite part of it was the stand-up part. And as a 10 or 11-year-old, I tried stand-up on my parents, and you can see that I became a psychiatrist instead. So you see how that went. He's done stand-up, written for Howard Stern, other comedians, Mad Magazine, which was something that was a staple when I was a child also, and Celebrity Roasts. He's got a book out called Ha Ha History, the first history book you'll want to read, out on Amazon. a new movie short on YouTube called Comedian President with fellow comedian Jason Scoops and Madison Malloy, and his own podcast, Stand Up Taller with Al Martin. I want to get this right, Neil. Is your last name pronounced Berliner or Berliner?
Neither. Berliner, like the city Berlin.
Oh, fantastic. So I've already started.
You totally
These are
screwed that up,
pre-production
Dimitri.
questions that
Way
you
to go.
should
we like to do pre-production on the show itself because
I
we're
see.
super professional. So you've done stand-up too, as I understand from listening to you before. And so I tried stand-up as a kid. It didn't work out very well. I completely bombed. But have you ever been on stage and done stand-up and completely bombed? And what does that feeling feel like to bomb in front of people that are actually there to see you and laugh? Because I know what it was like to bomb in front of my parents, but that's not the same.
Well, the way I decided to do stand-up in the first place was because I was inspired by Artie Lang. I was writing for Artie Lang at the Stern Show. And he said to me, you got to get up there sometimes to see what it feels like. So one night after working, I was working in a hospital on the east side of Manhattan, and the New York Comedy Club was down the street. So I said, you know what, let me just get up there. Let me tell the guy running the show what I've done, and I'll just get up there, do a few minutes. And of course I bombed, but that didn't stop me. I decided to go to the west side of Manhattan the same night and talk to somebody else I knew, and he let me go on stage. So I bombed twice in the same night, the first time I was ever on stage in New York City. And, you know, you have to go through it. You have to know what it feels like to bomb. And then you decide to prepare better the next time, and then you don't bomb as much. Now, when I go on stage, I'm very well prepared. So I won't do a long set. I'll do a few minutes, but I know that the jokes work. So that's how I've handled that situation.
How do you know the jokes work before you go on stage?
I know, I can tell. I mean, I can tell if my kids and wife like the jokes, then it means they're good.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough.
If they don't ridicule me for the material, then
Okay.
I can pull it on stage.
You mentioned that you wrote for Howard Stern, and Howard Stern famously has a very kind of raunchy persona on radio. I listened to him when I was in New York before he went on Sirius, and I thought he was hilarious, and I loved this show. But can you tell us what Howard Stern is like in real life and not on the radio?
Well, he's very organized, and he's very smart, professional, and funny, and you know, he's demanding. He wants everything done very tightly on the show, and he's a nice guy. And yeah, people ask me about Howard Stern all the time, but my perspective with Howard Stern is different than if some fan walks up to him on the street and tries to talk to him. You know, so
Right.
So what is he really like? He's like he's a certain way with certain people, you know, just as everybody is, you know. So I mean, I've provided some content on the show once in a while, and as a matter of fact, and I'm going to be doing it again too. I just after several years, I submitted something 2 weeks ago, which will be on the show. So
That's
For
great.
his show?
second coming with the Stern Show coming up.
Nice.
But yeah, to answer your question, you know, from my perspective, he's a great guy. You know.
Okay. Do you have a favorite Howard Stern story that you can share that is meant for radio or podcasting?
Favorite story.
Or the best story?
Well, you know, I brought this character, an old white rapper from Queens, onto the show, and her name was Fruity Nutcake. Stage name was Fruity Nutcake Rapping Granny.
Mhm.
The Stern Show had this orgasm machine called the Sibian. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but
Yeah.
you would have the strippers come on and get on the Sibian, and it was wild. But then Rapping Granny wanted to go on it one morning, so she went on it, and Howard later said that it was his favorite Sibian segment ever when Rapping Granny went on the Sibian.
And how old is Rapping Granny?
Well, she was in her 70s then. She passed away about 5 years ago, I think. So she was well into her 70s when she did that segment.
Perfect. Okay. And it's not on Pornhub, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Didn't make it to Pornhub. Okay.
No.
Along with all the other Sibian videos. And I have no idea why I would know that.
I was going to ask you that. I was a little.
There's no reason for me
Inquiring
to know that.
minds,
That-
Dimitri.
that-
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, that would be
concerned about that.
disturbing. I agree.
You've also done roasts.
Yeah.
You've done William Shatner, Flavor Flav. Who's your favorite to have roasted?
Well, I did some Stern Show roasts to start. So I roasted Andy Dick on the show, Artie Lang, Gary, who's Baba Booey on the show, and Ronnie the limo driver. And then Artie invited me to write for the Comedy Central roast of William Shatner. My favorite one, well, the funniest story about me roast writing is for the Matt Lauer roast. It was a Friars Club roast. It wasn't televised. It was in Manhattan. And one of the roasters was Katie Couric. And she asked the writers to come up with a little known fact about Matt Lauer. Now, this was before the Matt Lauer sex stuff came out. And I wrote a line that was a little known fact about Matt Lauer is that he loves to eat curry. Okay. So people now, Ann Curry, when she was on the dais, so her napkin went in front of her, and 1,500 people hit the deck, and it was the line was in all the newspapers the next day. So that's by far my most famous roast line.
There's a joke somewhere here why he doesn't like curry so much, but I won't say. I'll let Dimitri say it.
Okay. I'm not saying anything.
Best is to keep quiet about it.
I'm gonna drink my coffee.
This is a family show. More or less, apparently, but not this segment. Apparently, is there any kind of behind the scenes of a roast that you can give us? Like, what's it like back there? Because I've watched a lot of them, and I don't remember his name, but the guy who considers himself the roast master.
Oh, Jeff Ross. Yeah.
Jeff Ross.
Or maybe as different way. Is there any? Do you know of anyone that ever got upset with a joke? Anybody that took it the wrong way, either off?
Well, yeah. Amy Schumer once did a joke on Johnny Knoxville from Jackass, and one of the Jackass guys had recently died, and Amy Schumer says, "Well, it should have been you," and everybody just stared at her like, "Oh, what is this? It wasn't really even a joke." So that really annoyed everybody.
You roast out of love, so yes. You're supposed to be funny. But is there anything like that goes on? Do you tell the people that you're roasting behind the scenes that you're going to do certain jokes? Do you agree on them at the beginning before you go out there?
The only thing,
just do it off the cuff.
Well, the only thing that I can remember all of us agreeing on was for the Shatner roast. His wife had recently died in a swimming pool, so that for certain was off limits.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But you have to check. You have to make sure that people aren't going to do stuff that they shouldn't be doing. It.
Right. So that would have been bad.
So that we don't have Will Smith slapping people up on stage. Right.
Till this day,
I don't know if anything can prevent him from.
I don't know. I'm skeptical till this day about that Will Smith thing, man. I don't know. I still think it was a stunt for ratings or for popularity or whatnot.
I think it was staged.
I don't know.
Well, it didn't do much for his ratings or popularity, so I don't know.
For the show, I guess for the show, for the awards.
No, and it didn't do anything for Chris Rock either because he came out with a show a year later, and a lot of people.
Did he sell out?
Funny.
No.
Well, no. Of course, he sells out all the time, but the show itself, people didn't think it was that funny. So you roasted Flavor Flav. Yeah. And I'm curious because I can see him sitting there taking these things, but what was his favorite joke, if you remember?
I don't know what his favorite joke was, but I just remember what I wrote for him. One joke of mine was there's a lot of I was just backstage, and a lot of gangster rappers here, a lot of weapons back there, and this is the first comedy event where the security has to protect the audience from the performers.
Okay. We should get a laugh track on here.
No, you shouldn't. It'd be more.
We don't need a laugh track.
It's more natural.
Dimitri likes sound.
That's right.
And
I do like sound effects.
But I'm not going to be mean to you, Dimitri. I'm not going to be mean to you.
No, that's okay. You can be mean to me. That's fine. That's part of why we do this.
That would be the usual.
I was told I was mean to Dimitri.
That would be normal. That's kind of like your guy's dynamic. You're always mean to him, and I think that's what he knows. So that's fine.
Yes. I'm not mean. It's not a fun.
Stay true to yourself. Well, let me ask you something, Neil, if you don't mind. So I get that you write for people, you write jokes for people, and that you do your own stuff as well. Do you ever, we are the Psych podcast. We try to talk about, people's behavior, human behavior, whatnot. In your case, when you write a joke for someone and you see that joke being successful, or that person taking the joke to, miles that you would never think it would go, do you have that human feeling that you should have been the one telling it? Does that ever strike a bone? Okay.
No. I'm very happy to get any kind of forum for my material. So, I mean, look, the Howard Stern show was my first break, and he had a listenership of several million people back then. He still has over 1 million people a day listen to the show. So it's a real thrill. It was especially at the beginning to hear my material over Sirius through my car, my stuff. So I don't have any problem with other people doing my material. I mean, look, my life was not set up for me to be a traveling road comedian. Okay. My path was, I mean, I always knew I was funny from very young, and I always knew I'd have some kind of involvement with comedy, but I had no idea I'd be involved with big venues like this, big national venues. I'm just very fortunate to have anybody doing my material in big forums like this. And, I was destined to become a doctor. I was like, that was the track for me, So I'm very lucky in that I've been able to, combine both worlds and get involved with both worlds.
Dimitri, you're on mute.
You're muted, Dimitri.
I'm sure just saying it's pretty good, but it's mute.
This is the kind of professionalism we bring to podcasting.
Yeah.
Is technical difficulties and speaking when you're muted.
It was kind of fun to watch you, though. It was.
Yeah, the hand gestures. Yeah. I'm a hand gesture kind of guy. So you said that you were funny as a kid, but you went into medicine. So why did you choose medicine as opposed to just going and doing stand-up? Seeing if you could make it as
because I was a lower middle class Jewish kid from Brooklyn, and if you're a half smart kid when you're in the 70s, you're expected to become a doctor, or if you're not that bright, you become a lawyer. There's nothing really else to do.
That's
now we have
computers. Hilarious.
What?
Because I say the same thing when people say, "Why'd you go into medicine?" I say, when you're a Jewish kid in Miami, you're either a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah. Jackie Mason once said, if the kid's totally retarded, an accountant. I was very good friend with Jackie Mason, by the way.
Oh boy.
Any stories from Jackie Mason you can tell us?
Let's see. Jackie Mason stories. Well, he has this daughter, Sheba Mason, that he never admitted to being his daughter. And I wound up doing some shows with her, and I brought Jackie's book, which he signed to me. He wrote, "To my most devoted fan, your pal, Jackie Mason." And I showed it to Sheba. I said, "Hey, your father liked me." She was cool. She was cool with that. She was cool. He was a genius. Jackie Mason was a genius. He helped me get through med school. Me and my roommates and I played his albums constantly in med school, and we would quote his stuff, and we really took a liking to him. And I'll tell you a good story about Jackie Mason. He had all those Broadway shows later on, like I guess in the 80s and 90s. And one day I was backstage with him. I said, "Jackie, I have all your old albums on back then it was cassette, I guess." I said, do you have them? Do you want them?" He goes, "Yeah, bring them in." And he listened to all of them, and he added stuff to his show that he had forgotten from his own albums after I gave him that stuff.
And so he did that on stage?
Yes.
Excellent. Is he your favorite comedian of all time?
People, it's you do a sports podcast, right? It's like sports. You have different eras for different favorites, right? So, when I was a kid, Tom Seaver, his poster was on my wall. I mean, as you go on, different people influence you. So the same is true of comedy. So my early influences were people like Johnny Carson, for sure. He's probably number one. Woody Allen, Alan King. People I used to see on Ed Sullivan back then. Ed Sullivan was a show, by the way.
Yeah.
Sunday night. Yeah. Sunday night, all of America watched.
Dimitri, you would know.
I would know because I'm the old one in this.
You are.
Yes.
But,
I wasn't alive for that, but I do know what it is. Yeah. So who's your favorite modern comedian then?
Well, I like a lot of people. I like Jim Gaffigan very much. I like some guys you may not even have heard of. I don't know if you've heard of Gianmarco Ceresi. He's excellent.
No.
I'm more in the New York camp than the LA camp, so I know a lot of New York comedians. You mentioned Jason Scoop. Jason Scoop is going to be a really big star. And I met him 10 years ago. We were doing shows together, mostly on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And after the first or second time I worked with him, I went up to him. I said, "Jason, you are going to be very effing famous." And he looked at me. He said, "Yeah, thank you. People have told me that." And when he said that to me, I was thinking, well, people tell you that, but I'm going to try to be involved. I'm going to do a project with you someday. You are really good. And that's how I eventually came to write Comedian President. And
he does very good impressions.
He's a master. Jason is a
Very good.
master impressionist.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
He won Dana Carvey's show called First Impressions. It was a TV contest. He's an incredible impressionist. He can impersonate anybody, and you saw the film. I mean, he totally nails it. You know. So I wrote this film for him, and I spent 3 months early this year. I mean, put my heart and soul into it. I produced it. I wrote 95% of the jokes, and I even bought the props. I did the graphics and the music, everything. So I was very happy with that project. But you're going to definitely hear a lot about Jason Scoop.
How old is he? He looks young, like in his 20s. Jason Scoop. How old is he?
He's 31 now.
Oh, 31. Okay.
Yeah, he's young.
So I wanted to ask you about the different eras because you mentioned that. What joke did you write or that you've heard back when you started that you don't think you could write now or perform now?
Because it might be politically incorrect or something.
For whatever reason.
I don't know. I mean, look, most jokes that most people like me write are throwaways. They're topical jokes, like monologue jokes. So I used to write for a show in LA, like a Tonight Show format show. And, there are 5 categories of monologue jokes, basically, which would be 100% of what you hear on any late night monologue. There's current events, sports, celebrities, science, technology, and then one-offs like weird stories that'll happen in the news. So the point I'm making is that 99% of the stuff I write is good today, but has a shelf life of like a week or two. Okay. So there's some jokes that we call evergreen. They're good forever,
Right. But there's got to be something that you would have mocked in current events 30 years ago.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know.
That you can't mock now.
That you can't. Well, the issue
that you wouldn't be able to write.
Well, the issue becomes: do you want to take on? Do you want to write whatever you think, or do you want to, bow to political entities that don't want you to say whatever you want?
Right.
So I've never really done that. I don't really care what people think of what I write. If they don't like it, they don't have to listen to it. So I'll write anything I want. But to answer your question, I'll go back on Facebook. They have Facebook memories every day, and I'll look at my, jokes from 15 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever. And some of the political jokes, I don't even remember what I was talking about. The names are just so in the past. As I say, they were just throwaway jokes at the time. And yeah, there's some politicians' names who don't mean anything anymore. But there's nothing I would not say today. I wouldn't throw away a joke today because it might offend somebody. Let's put it that way. I don't care about it.
Speaking of like offending people or maybe doing some cruel things, we were talking earlier today about scare pranks and how that's very big now on YouTube shorts and Insta Reels and TikTok of all of these scare pranks, whether it's in an elevator and somebody goes ballistic in an elevator, scare people, or whether it's the tree people like we see sometimes in Vegas and they jump out and scare people. What are your thoughts about scare pranks? Comedy?
Well, the tree thing happened to me in San Francisco about 25 years ago. And it scared the hell out of me. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And that's where I draw the line. If something's going to hurt somebody, then I don't advocate it. Okay. So I'm very much against those kind of things. And, those guys who do that tree thing or other things like that, they don't know the health condition of the victim. So, I mean, that's tantamount to assault, if you think about it. If somebody
You're not a scare prank fan.
I'm not a fan of it.
He's a victim. You just said it. He's a victim.
Well, I was
a victim of a scare prank. It could be very scary.
But even aside from me having been a victim, I feel for the other people who are victimized. And as I said, it really could be, dangerous health-wise to somebody. So that's why.
But not even
it does
like
make me a bad person to laugh at these things.
No,
I go down.
No, I mean it's funny. Look, it's funny to watch somebody falling down the stairs. All right, it's just funny. Now it evokes all kinds of bad stuff in us, but the visual is funny. And I'm laughing because I'm thinking about when I was a kid, in my apartment building, some woman fell down the stairs and we all cracked up. And it's a funny visual. Is it nice to be laughing at that? Probably not.
Probably. Yeah.
Right,
I think it's debatable. I think it's debatable, but even when you were saying, about how, health wise, it could be dangerous with the scare pranks, right? If a person has a heart condition you don't know about, or like there was a child with autism spectrum disorder that made some news as well, that they did a scare prank on, and the person doesn't know who they're encountering. But I've also seen in some of the TikToks where a person basically jumps up and now they're going into the middle of the street because they're terrified. They can get hit by your car. There's all sorts of things. Is it funny to watch?
Yes.
It's funny to watch.
It's funny to watch.
It's funny.
But
I mean,
I don't think that I've been a victim of a scare prank at some point on Vegas. I didn't have as bad of a reaction as I thought I probably would have had if that happened to me. But, I didn't die. I didn't have a heart attack. None of that. It can be scary for people, and you don't know who you're encountering.
I mean,
also, it plays into the comedy idea of better you than me. Like, it's okay if it happens to you. Like, the community, the audience can watch it happening to you. Like when that tree thing happened to me, there's a bunch of people watching.
Yeah.
And the victim. I'm thinking, like, what are these people looking at? I said to myself, why are they staring at me? What are these people staring at me for? And then, the guy did it. I figured it out. So it's sort of like roast. It's like we're all, benefiting from the
one person's demise.
problem,
Yeah.
one person's problem at the time.
Yeah. Well, I guess it sells because what's the show called? AFV, American Funniest Videos, or whatever it's called.
America's Funniest Videos.
Right. Then maybe 90% of their videos are people falling. Right, and that's popular.
He was saying that a big portion,
90% of those videos are people falling.
They're they're all the same thing. Exactly.
Right.
And the comedians don't really think of that as comedy. I mean, comedians don't discuss that show ever. It's just a prank show.
Right.
It's a one joke show.
I was going to say, as a comedian, you probably don't think those things are funny because it's not comedy. It's not people writing.
There's no work. There's no work on it.
There's no work to it.
It's not written. Right. It's not
right.
Written.
There's no.
It's really incidents that happen to people that the consequence is that some people are going to laugh at it and find it funny.
Right. But as you say, it's so repetitive though. So, I mean, it has an audience. Anything will have an audience. Right.
Yeah. I guess that's why I find it funny, because it's repetitively the same. And speaking of things that aren't funny, but comedy, do you ever try out material on patients?
No.
No? You never told a joke? No.
Well, look, I will tell a joke if it's in the context. I won't tell a joke to try out material on a patient, let's say. But I've always told jokes. It's part of who I am. And, if it can increase rapport with a person, with a patient, I might do that,
Mm-hmm.
And there are some patients who look me up. They know all about what I do. And overwhelmingly, no one's ever complained to me. Oh, you're a comedian. You shouldn't be more of a psychiatrist and professional. No one's ever said that to me. They think it's cool, basically. So it's another way to relate to a patient, in my opinion. It only helps me in psychiatry. It doesn't hurt.
Well, funny things happen all the time when I interact with patients and when I was a resident and stuff like that. Has there been anything that's super funny in your profession that you found absolutely hilarious that's happened to you in psychiatry or in residency medicine?
Well,
you know what, I can use this.
Has it happened? Stuff happened in my profession. No, but I mean, nothing comes to mind. But you see, I write for projects. Like somebody will call me up. You got to come up with 20 jokes on, Johnny Depp in the next 2 days, and I can do it. That's what I'm good at. I can hone in on a project and do it. Very specific stuff. Mm-hmm. So, what was my point? Oh, when I first started with the venues I've been working on, I've been working at, like the big venues I told you about. I often wondered, like, was I funny when I was younger? Was I even funny in school or anything? And I contacted some guys from med school, and they said, yeah, you were very funny. One time we were doing a C-section when we did OBGYN, and the attending had to stop for like a minute and a half. He was laughing so hard. But I don't remember that. So things must have happened. I must have been funny, in the context of learning medicine and doing rotations and stuff. But I don't remember specific jokes or incidents like that.
So it was basically you being you, making a comment, and other people found it was funny. It wasn't
it was just me being me. But people have told me, oh, I knew you were going to be something besides a doctor. I always knew that about you. You had the sense of humor, and I also play guitar, and I'm in a band and stuff. So that people knew that I was just not going to be a psychiatrist, and that was going to be it for me.
Yeah.
What band do you play in?
Oh, I just play in a cover band in South Florida. We call it Joker's Wild because my drummer my drummer said, look, we should, you write all these jokes and you have a lot of jokes about rock bands. Every 3 or 4 songs, you should do a joke for the crowd. So, and that evolved into us calling the band Jokers Wild.
So when's your next gig?
It's actually Yom Kippur at a temple breaking the fast. I'm not kidding.
Wow. There's material all over the place there. I mean,
Of course.
Okay. All right. So we talked about the Comedian President movie, but you also wrote a book. So tell us about the book and how you came up with it and what's in it, what's going on.
Okay, well, it's written by me and 3 other friends from The Tonight Show and The Stern Show. The guy who came up with the idea is a guy from my high school class, actually. And he's a comedian in Jersey. He's also an entertainment attorney. And he would go on Facebook and say, on this date in history, this happened. And he'd say something about the event in history. And he came to me, he said, we should do a book like this. I said, well, okay, fine, but let's do history events and then a joke relating to the current day, modern stuff. So put a modern twist on it. So I got a hold of some friends of mine, and we spent like 6 to 9 months writing jokes for every day of the year, January 1st to December 31st. So 366 jokes, including February 29th. And we wrote multiple jokes for each date. So, and I became the editor of the book. I would choose which jokes to use in the book. And it's called Haha History. And it came out on Amazon in January. And it turned out it was the #1 new joke book on Amazon when it came out. So, it's nice.
Amazing.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
I actually have some. I know you're a sports podcast, so if you want, I can read you a couple of the sports jokes that are in the book.
Go
Oh
for it.
yeah, of course.
All right. So, for instance, January 7th, 1984, 2-time Cy Young Award winner Denny McClain is indicted on drug trafficking, embezzlement, and racketeering charges. On the bright side, he becomes the leader in wins, ERA, and strikeouts in his prison softball league. There's the picture.
And there's art too.
And there's art.
And there's art. I did on the sports one. Kind of sports. February 2nd, 2004. Janet Jackson exposes her boob during the Super Bowl halftime show, upsetting millions of viewers who turned into the game expecting to see wholesome family entertainment and chronic brain injuries.
That went along with last week's.
Yeah.
I'll give you one. This will be the last one. Let's see. Oh, February 23rd, 1988. Lights are installed in Wrigley Field, enabling the Chicago Cubs to play night games. After finishing the game 24 games out of first place, the entire Cubs roster becomes terrified as the maniacal fans can now identify the players by their faces.
You see that one coming.
So it's stuff like that.
All right, so we're gonna get you out here on this. There are 5 big personality traits that there was a test that was designed for 5 personality traits, and we decided to come up with 5 big questions related to the 5 personality traits so we can get to know our guests better. And this is the inaugural version of that. So you are a pioneer.
What's that scale called again? It's 5.
The big 5.
It's just called. It was somebody.
Yeah, it's the big 5 personality trait.
Yeah.
That's right. So openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So are you ready so that we can know you better if we haven't already known you better? Number 1, how do you take your coffee?
Well, you remember the movie Airplane?
Yes.
Remember what the little girl said when the stewardess came over to her about the coffee? She said, "How do you take your coffee?" And she said, "Black like my men." Remember that?
Well,
Excellent.
is that your answer?
I just can't think. I take my coffee. I have a latte with almond milk now, with no sweetener. I have
Very healthy.
Costco cold brew and almond milk, and that's my.
Excellent. What is your default tip percentage?
Tip percentage default, I would say 22 to 25.
Wow. Okay. And does it go up or down depending on the service, or is it just?
Yes, but I don't screw people with really bad tips unless it's a horrendous mess. Then I might give 15%. I very rarely go below 20%.
What about for like DoorDash and like the deliveries?
I don't really use the service as much. I don't. I don't. We like to go out. I like getting in my car and picking the stuff up. We have a lot of as you do down there. We have tons of restaurants along within 10 minutes of us. I don't like waiting around. I don't like being like at their mercy, like if they're going to show up, when they're going to show up. I would just rather
go and get it. Do you tip on takeout?
Yeah, I do. I probably don't give 25%. I probably give like even 15 to 20%. You don't take it. Yeah.
Wellington has a festival that I absolutely adore. We went for the first time this year, the Bacon and Bourbon Festival. Yeah. Have you been to that?
No, but I'm a big fan of bacon. I'm not really a drinker. Next time you come, give me a call.
Awesome.
When is it?
That's the thing about it is it changes. This year it was in February, but occasionally it's in January and March, and they don't advertise it like you should. So at the beginning of the year, every year, I go to the Wellington, whatever city page and you find the search for it. And I block off that weekend because it's like this year it's small, like it's merchants and stuff, but I like bacon and I like bourbon, which is something that I have to cut back on.
I had the most awesome bacon last week at the Seminole Casino restaurant, NYY, New York Yankee restaurant. Mm-hmm. They have this bacon that they hang on like a little clothesline, and it drips. The fat drips into cornbread below it. Oh. It's unbelievable.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's usual.
It was killer.
All right, last 3 questions.
Okay.
What sport would you get rid of forever?
Well, if you can call it a sport, I guess curling. Is that a sport?
Sport? It is a sport.
You mean real sports?
No. It's whatever you want it to be. But what's your issue with curling?
It's like a Roomba. It's like a vacuum cleaner there, and,
oh my God.
And they're so intent on sweeping that ice, and like their life depends on it, and it's like a total bullshit sport.
All right, fantastic.
All right.
What movie villain describes you the best?
What movie?
Villain.
What movie villain describes you the best?
Movie villain. Let's see. Go to the next one. I'll think about that. I'll pass. Okay. I'll pass, John.
You're gonna pass on the Big Five?
You're gonna phone a friend
on the Big Five?
There's so many different options.
That's why it's a great question. What's the most frightened you've ever been?
Most frightened I've ever been. Frightened. I think when I saw The Shining when I was a kid, that movie, I could not look at the screen. I was looking at the exit for most of that movie. It just it hit me. It affected me in a way that I was very frightened by that movie, The Shining.
Do you see that in the theater?
So movie villain, I'll go. What's the question about villain? What
did you see?
Identify?
What movie villain describes you the best?
That's a good question. Very, very few people stump me on these in these interviews.
We've done it.
You did it.
We've done it.
He's gonna have an answer. I see it. He's gonna have the answer.
It's gonna be a good one too. There's a lot of time invested in that answer.
Let's see. I don't know.
Well, is it because you're very, very like good villain, or you don't think you're a villain at all? That you have to pick one that's not that bad.
Well, I'm more humor oriented, so I've watched a lot more comedies than dramas, I guess.
There's villains in comedy too.
That's true. Man, I bet it was probably some kind of Woody Allen movie. But are there villains in that?
All right. Well, tell us this. What's your favorite comedy movie?
It's much too difficult to answer. I sort of like the baseball question, like the eras. But I think a very underrated comedy that people should see is Broadway Danny Rose. Okay, it's a Woody Allen movie. You got to see this movie, and you should see it around Thanksgiving because it's Thanksgiving related.
Okay.
Noted.
I'm trying to think of some superhero movie where I'd be the villain. I mean, I don't know, the Joker maybe.
You're the Joker? Wow. Okay.
The Joker. Hey, Joker.
Well, that's original.
The Joker's a murderer. He's not
He's
not really a comedian.
You said villain. You said villain.
Villain. You forced him to choose a villain, Dimitri.
But
that's true. I did. It's,
But
I'm
I related it to jokes somehow. So
No,
yeah,
it-
I'm the villain
that give me
because
some.
I forced you to answer the
There you
question.
go.
But this is great that you offered a movie from the 70s. It sounds like this is going to go good with our young demographic that we're trying to get. But but yes,
Well,
Steph, the one who didn't sound as old as he could be today, but
Yeah, but Dimitri,
Just-
you're the one that only watches documentaries, so
Oh god.
that's true, and
Just saying.
superhero movies. But just to ask you, so that we can end on this, because you offered a movie from the 70s. You know what Rizz means with the young
Rizz?
kids? We
No.
were talking about this earlier.
Rizz.
I'm just gonna explain. It's about charisma.
Oh, charisma.
Game.
It's
It's
much
game.
more than that. It's about
much
game.
more than
It's
that.
more
It's
than
about
that.
game.
I'm using appropriate language.
Thank you, Neil, for coming on here
Sure.
and being on our show. We appreciate it. Hopefully, maybe we'll have you in the future.
Or you just might see us show up at one of your gigs somewhere.
There you
Yeah,
go. Or
yeah,
we'll just
that-
show
that-
up at your band.
Oh, go to neilberlinercomedy.com, by the way. I'll put a plug in for myself.
Comedy.
Neil
Neil Berliner
Berliner
comedy.
Comedy.com.
neilberlinercomedy.com.
Okay.
All your,
All
all your comedy needs.
mental health tip of the daytime.
Day full of hiccups? Need a shake up? Listen up. It's the Psych Effect Podcast Mental Health Tip of the Day.
Brought to you this week by the Dolphins over the Patriots tonight at 8 o'clock. We are recording early today, not recording at night after the games, because the Dolphins are playing at New England today. And we're predicting a winner.
We
Right.
are. We are.
Okay.
They are going
We
to
are.
win.
That's it. We're
Well
on a
predicted.
we on a winning streak, baby.
We got this.
That's right.
We are
1-0.
undefeated right now. We
We're
are
a winning streak.
undefeated. We
Yeah,
got this.
Undefeated. All right. Mental health tip of the day. Take it away. Internet problems.
So yeah, so I was gonna say, be patient with me, treat me right, because you don't know what I'm going through right now, right? I'm going through internet problem right now.
We can't be mean to
So
you,
in-
Steph.
We actually mentioned that. No, you cannot. We actually mentioned it earlier though, about when we talk about depression, that people walk around the world, they don't show the symptoms or what they're dealing with. So the mental health tip of the day, I think most people have heard it in some way or form or some words, which I'll paraphrase, is that whenever we go out in life, during your day, wherever you come across with, whoever you interact with, friends, coworkers, people you walk across in the street, always treat people right, because you never know what burden they'll carry. You never know what issues they're dealing with. So being a positive in their life would make a great deal of good. And that's pretty much it. And hopefully you get that in return, right? So that's it. Just treat each other right, because you don't know what they're going through.
Way to tie everything in a knot with regards to what we were talking
If you
about
heard that
earlier, and corporate greed. So treat people right, because you never know what they're carrying around, what burdens they're carrying around. Excellent. Thank you everyone for listening again. Remember, like, follow, subscribe, all of those good stuff, and leave written reviews. We can see you. We know who you are, because we get written reviews by texts all the time. All the time.
Yes.
But take those written reviews and put them in Apple or Spotify or something. We
One of
appreciate
those.
you as always. Keep listening. We are growing, which is great. And this was always the intent, is to grow and help people understand mental illness and help destigmatize it, and also watch scare prank videos and at least attempt to be funny
And apparently
If
be
not-
mean to Dimitri.
and and be mean to me, and try our best to be as comedic as possible. Not as good as professional comedians, but we're gonna be
As
who
best we
are,
can.
I guess, as best we can. All right, guys, we will see you
All right.
in the next one.
Be good.
And go Dolphins.
The previous podcast is for general informational purposes only and represented the individual opinions of Dr. Dimitri Bick, Dr. Stefan de Graaf, Dr. Suzanne Mignon, and the guests. It does not constitute the practice of medicine or other professional healthcare services and should not be taken as medical advice or an establishment of standard of care. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The content on this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.